Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
This is episode 298. Welcome back to the program. We've got a great show this week. We're going to check out the 3 pieces that illustrious Brother Todd E. Creason, founder of the Midnight Freemasons, published and just finished a series called What is Masonic Education? Now, we've touched on this subject in the past. Of course, I read my piece a few episodes back about what defines Masonic education. What I'd like to do in this episode is read you this 3-part series, open it up for discussion on social media, check it out, and next week we'll likely be back with another piece about Masonic education, this time coming from illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison. Interestingly enough, we all chose to write about education right around the same time. It was serendipitous, I guess you could say, and the theme really took off. But before we get to that, let's just check in with some news. Not much going on in the fraternity this week, except the Franken manuscript, courtesy of the Scottish Rite Northern Masonic Jurisdiction, was just released. I believe it's about 700 pages. It is a full-color facsimile with notes, translations, some essays, and the price tag, I was a little taken aback by it at $95. However, this is a great book, well worth it. It is an epic tome, really. I mean, it is a large book, and you're not going to come across this anywhere else. You know, I had posted online a little bit about where you could pick this up, on archive.org or whatever, but the issue is that if you find it on archive.org, you're lucky if it's not an Italian translation. Subsequently, we also have the other Franken manuscript that illustrious Brother Art de Hoyos pushed out just recently, a little while back rather, and that's about $55. And of course, there are the other facsimile reprints, which you can get through Kessinger on Amazon.com. A hardbound edition will run you about $30 ship. The issue with facsimile reprints is, of course, there are errors and typographical things that can happen. However, they are largely pretty good for research purposes. But if you're looking for something a little more, something that gives you some substance and some understanding of the terms, I would consider definitely picking this book up. It is a little bit of a bummer to me that we didn't have Masons exclusively working on this, but nonetheless, a great piece. You should probably check that out. So just head on over, go to Google, type in Scottish Rite NMJ, that's Northern Masonic Jurisdiction, NMJ. Click on shop and you can find it. I think it's the top thing there. It's about $75 to ship when you go international with it. So if you're stateside, $95. Doesn't cost you anything to ship. Briefly, I'll just mention I had some people recently ask about some of the topics that I come out to do talks on, and of course we do the Masonic Pub Crawl, Esoterics 101, Connecting Masons Through Technology, Memphis Mizram, Finding Truth, which is essentially about Masonic writing, establishing yourself as a Masonic authority through your writing, some techniques there. Long Been in Darkness, which is something that we're going to premiere on June 13th. Now, upcoming things on June 7th in Jefferson City, Missouri, York Rite Grand Sessions. I'll be doing the Word over lunch at noon. It is a non-tiled event. June 8th, I'll be at Hesperia Lodge, Connecting Masons Through Technology is the topic. June 13th, I'll be at Wheeling. Of course, that is DC Kregier number 81, and we'll be doing Long Been in Darkness, an exploration of traditional candidate preparation. June 21st, I'll be in Columbus, Ohio at York 563. That is a Wednesday. I know for a fact it's a Wednesday. If I said June 21 and it's actually the 22nd, then go with that. It's the Wednesday there in that week. I'll be at York 563 at the Northwest Masonic Temple. We're going to talk about Esoterics 101. Their website is york563.org. June 23rd, 24th, of course, that is Freemasonry's Legacy, Freemasonry's Future in Alexandria, Virginia. Get your tickets over at themasonicroundtable.com/300. It's going to be epic. And one last thing before we move on, I have to throw a huge shout out to Brothers Blend Coffee once again. These guys have kept me going day after day at times. If you go on over to brothersblendcoffee.com, you can pick up coffee made by brothers 4 brothers in 3 flavors that are all Masonically themed. My favorite is the Tyler's Cup. It's a really good cup of coffee. You don't even need to add anything to it, to be honest with you. It's a really mild black coffee if you drink it that way. It is a fundraiser for Milford Lodge in Milford, Massachusetts, so please do head on over there to help them out and help yourself out. No kickbacks to the show on this one. This is just something that is a great fundraiser that they do, and they provide a great product, coffee. So again, brothersblendcoffee.com. Check it out. With that, let's go ahead and get into this week's first piece. This is What is Masonic Education Part 1? Again, by Midnight Freemason founder Todd Creason, 33rd degree. What is Masonic Education? It's a good question, and I can tell you exactly what it is. It's the answer to almost every problem lodges are having today. Masonic Education is why most of our new members joined in the first place, and one of the last things they'll find in many of our lodges today. Men petition our lodges because they are seeking something. They want to belong to an organization that shares their values. They want to be more active in their community. They want to learn to be a better man by improving their character. They want to take part in the time-honored traditions and ancient teachings of the Freemasons. They want to live their life to a higher and more noble standard. And the expectation when they join is that they are going to receive instruction on these things from the Freemasons. That's certainly why I joined. I even went through the traditional way and spent months memorizing the catechisms and obligations. I don't learn quickly, and it was a huge challenge. I saw beautiful degree work, heard wonderful lectures, and when I was finally raised to a Master Mason, I considered it one of the most important accomplishments in my life, right up there with baptism, marrying my wife, and the birth of my children. And then I attended my first regular stated meeting. There were no deep discussions of Masonic principles at that meeting, nor at the second or the third or fourth meeting. I finally asked and was told there were meetings I could attend if I wanted to learn more about Masonry. I did. So I found out where and when those meetings took place, and I went. I learned how to carry a rod, and how to turn a corner, and what hand I should use when I open the door during a degree. I learned the proper way to open the Bible. I even learned in what order to turn on the lights beside the altar. It wasn't Masonic education, it was ritual instruction. Other than what was contained within the lectures of those 3 Masonic degrees, there was no additional Masonic education offered in my part of the world when I became a Master Mason 11 years ago. And that's exactly the way it is in many places. And that's why I've worked so hard to bring that education component back into the lodges. I said earlier that providing Masonic education was the answer to almost every problem lodges are having. I can tell you without hesitation that it's true. We need membership. The fact of the matter is that there is no better recruiting tool than members who are enjoying themselves and learning new things. They talk about it. They get their friends to join. I've seen it over and over again. Case in point, in a brand new chapter of Royal Arch in Illinois I'm a member of, Admiration Chapter. This is a chapter that focuses on Masonic education. Every meeting we have a very short business meeting and then an educational component, a speaker, a discussion on a topic of interest that is announced in advance, a table lodge, a presentation, etc. You know what Admiration Chapter doesn't have problems with? Attendance and membership. We have great turnouts and we continue to add members. And we're not recruiting new members. We don't need to recruit because they're coming to us. That's pretty impressive considering Admiration Chapter hasn't even received a charter yet. We're still operating under dispensation of the most excellent Grand High Priest of Illinois. We've completed the necessary requirements at this point, and we'll get that charter in the next few months. Do you want to talk about member retention? Members just stop showing up, right? Or you get a new Master Mason in your lodge, and he comes for a while, and you don't see him again. Just drops out of sight, and your members wonder why. Sound familiar? I can tell you the most common reason why. Your meetings are boring. It's not what the new Mason thought it was going to be, probably because he thought he'd continue to be learning things instead of talking about how the Eastern Star ladies are using our coffee and not replacing it. And if we're going to resurface the parking lot or just fill in the potholes. That's not why those men became Masons, is it? Money is an issue too. There's 2 reasons for that. Most lodges' dues are too cheap. That's a separate but related issue. Before you can jack up your dues, you're going to have to offer more than getting to sit in a room once or twice a month and listen to somebody read the mail. But if we could fix some of these obvious problems, and we filled our buildings with Masons, we'd have more money, wouldn't we? And the more members we have in our Blue Lodges, the more Scottish Rite Masons we'd have, and the more York Rite Masons we'd have, and the more Shriners, etc. I've been beating this drum for a long time now. New members want education. The success of the Midnight Freemasons in itself is evidence of that. The success of lodges and bodies that are beginning to focus on education again is evidence of that. If we continue to do the same things, we can continue to expect the same results. The ritual is an important part of who we are as Freemasons. It's one of the things that makes us unique. Learning ritual is not Masonic education any more than learning to drive a stick shift qualifies you as an auto mechanic. We talk a lot in Admiration chapter about enhancing the membership experience. What we mean by that is offering our members what they wanted to begin with, a place where we could learn from each other, talk about values, and learn more about what Freemasonry has to teach us about how to become better men, better husbands, better fathers, better citizens. So, if you're where I was 11 years ago, seeking further light, where none exists, what do you do? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this series, and that's the end of Part 1. What is Masonic Education? Part 2. There's a difference between education and instruction. As I fully expected, the first installment of this series received a large number of cheers and quite a few jeers as well. Most of the readers of the last installment understood what I was saying. Ritual is an important part of our Masonic tradition, and without question, there are aspects of ritual that are very critical to our education as Freemasons. I don't think anybody expressed it better than my good friend and brother Brian L. Pettis, who said, "Learning ritual introduces us to the lessons that, if internalized, will help us to be the better men we want to be. Learning ritual and floor work teaches us to be intentional in our thoughts, words, and actions." He went on to say that the problem is when learning the ritual becomes the end. It's not the end. Brian was making the same point I was. Ritual is important, but it is only the beginning of what should be our ongoing and lifelong education and growth as Freemasons. That being said, there is a lot in the ritual that is education if we teach it. I've seen several presentations that take the ritual and explain it in detail. They explain the history of the degrees and where they came from. They explored the deeper meaning of the words by putting those words into the context of the time in which they were written. Instead of being merely memorized words, those words took on a different meaning for me once the context was even explained. They explained why things are done in a certain precise way. They went back into history to explain what each chair in the lodge actually represents. Likewise, I've seen and given many great presentations that go into much deeper detail on the ritual lectures and explore the meanings of symbols introduced in the ritual. I gave a pretty good 20-minute presentation on just one of the symbols we were introduced in the first degree, and believe me, I could easily go an hour. So there is a lot there within our ritual that is education, and as Brother Pettis pointed out, there's a great value in the patience and effort it takes to learn the precise movements and memorize word for word the ritual as written in the arcane English. But the ritual is just the beginning of that journey. Masonic education is what comes next. So, what is Masonic education? Well, there isn't just one answer. One definition is that it involves teaching each other how to apply the principles of Masonry into our everyday lives. It's about our history as a fraternity. It's about character development. It's about leadership development. I think today that role in character and leadership development is more crucial than ever. We aren't teaching values to our children as well as we once did. They often don't learn them in the home. Fewer and fewer Americans are going to church. Our schools are far too busy teaching kids specific subjects so they can pass tests. There is no time to teach kids values that would be useful in helping develop their character. I see Freemasonry filling that critical role, teaching young men positive character traits, ethics, and morals that they can apply to their everyday lives. That's one area that our new Royal Arch chapter, Admiration chapter, is exploring. We have a particular focus on education, and twice now we've had some very in-depth discussions with our members. The first discussion was on the topic of civility. We talked about what we thought that meant. We talked about how we could improve ourselves in that area, and we talked about how we could apply it to our everyday lives. We followed that discussion up recently with another moderated discussion on honor. That discussion was even better than the first discussion. We talked about honor, respect, and tradition in that discussion. Our members enjoy those discussions. They take something away with them when we have them. One of our members told me that he's thought differently about civility ever since that discussion several months ago. He's made changes to a couple areas of his life, particularly in his social media discussions and in the way he reacts to opposing points of view. That is Masonic education in the form of character development. A few months ago, my lodge hosted a leadership development seminar put on by the Grand Chapter of Illinois. It was open to all Masons, and we had a good turnout. We had a couple excellent presentations, followed by some good questions and meaningful discussion. We all left that evening thinking about where we're strong in leadership and where we need to improve. I thought particularly about one comment made during that presentation about delegation. I tend to do too many things myself that others could help me with. I've made a few changes there since. Again, that's Masonic education in the form of leadership development. I'm a student of history, and I have been all my adult life. I've written books, I've written magazine articles and blog posts, and given presentations and speeches almost always involving, in some way, history and Freemasonry. I am fascinated with how Masonic values have influenced history. I'm fascinated by how famous Freemasons have changed our world. I'm fascinated by the ritual, by the symbolism, by the questions about where our fraternity came from and how it evolved over time. I'm interested in the esoteric side of the craft, and I love to share the things I learn. I'm not an expert, not even close. I know more than some, but not nearly as much as others. I continue to learn and continue to share what I learn with others. What I do is Masonic education in the form of historical perspective. These aren't the only forms of Masonic education. There are many more. Masonic education is a tool we share with our brother that he can use in chipping away on that rough ashlar of his. And as we all learn together, we also all grow together. You'll find, as I have, that lodges and Masonic bodies that provide meaningful Masonic education to their members attract new members and more readily than those that don't. I drew a lot of criticism in that first installment when I said providing training and education to our members is the solution to most of the problems we have as a fraternity today. And I stand by that. It is. Masonic lodges are repositories of light. They are places of learning. If we're not going to teach those values we hold in such high regard, then we're just a social club with a few ritual traditions. So how do you get meaningful education started in your lodge? Well, that's not always easy to do. In the last installment, I'm going to tell you what we've done in my part of the world and how we've done it. And I'm going to give you some ideas I hope you'll be able to use in developing your own lodge education program. What is Masonic Education, Part 3? So in the first couple installments, I've talked a lot about Masonic education, the difference between Masonic education and ritual instruction. I've talked about how providing meaningful Masonic education in your lodges can solve a lot of the problems your lodges are having with membership and money. But now we're down to the big question. How do we get it going? Resistance. As with any new things you're going to want to do, you're going to encounter resistance to the idea. You're going to have that group that doesn't want to do anything differently than they have always done. So go slow. Don't ask for help. And be willing to do the work yourself. Because when it comes right down to it, most of the resistance you're going to encounter are going to come from the members that simply don't want additional work or expense. I'm sorry to say that so bluntly, but it's the truth. Just ask for 10 minutes at the end of the meeting. If you can't get that, ask for a few minutes in the dining hall before or after the meeting. Then put together a really interesting topic to present. Don't waste that time by just reading an article from a Short Talk Bulletin or from the Midnight Freemasons. Put something together they're going to enjoy, something that is interesting to them. This is a sell job, so sell it. Have you got one member a little more resistant than the others to change? What's he interested in? If I were you, I'd be putting something together that he's interested in, and then during the presentation, ask him if there's anything he'd like to add. Do you see what I'm talking about now? Go slow. Start really small. Don't waste time you have. Sell it. Birds of a feather. You're going to find others interested in what you're doing. Recruit them. Get them interested in helping. Get them interested in presenting pieces during that 10 minutes. Make that 10 minutes the 10 minutes in the meeting that everyone looks forward to. That's how the Midnight Freemasons started. Just me. 3 days a week. Lucky to get 200 or 300 hits a day. Just doing my thing. And then I found others. There's now more than a dozen Midnight Freemasons with over 2 million readers. Expand. You've heard the expression, you give him an inch and he'll take a foot. That's me. Always has been. And if you want to get this thing going, that needs to be you as well. Ask for a little more time once you get it going. Ask if you can invite an outside speaker, maybe somebody from another lodge. Ask if you can advertise your topics and invite other lodges to join your meeting so that they can enjoy the presentations. Again, don't waste that time. and take the time necessary to prepare really good presentations. Offer to do the same in other local lodges. Let it be known you'll travel and do 10 minutes wherever you're invited. And you will be invited. I promise you that. What you'll soon discover, if you're successful, those critics in the beginning will become your biggest fans. They'll see more people attending meetings. They'll enjoy the education you're providing. You may even find the meetings go faster and are a little less tedious because the members will be focused on getting to the education portion of that meeting. That education portion of the meeting that was originally met with so much resistance will become the center of your meetings. Your members will be talking about it, and as a result, you may even receive new petitions. Other members will begin having ideas about education in the lodge. We had a trivia night, and we invited other lodges to join us one evening. Basically, it was Jeopardy on Masonic topics. It was very fun to do. How about a symposium? How about a table lodge? Get ready, because if you can get through that initial resistance to change, you're going to find a very enthusiastic following and no shortage of ideas. Where does it all lead? To better men. That's where. That's our purpose, and the world has never been more in need of men of good character. As a society, we don't teach values as well as we used to, and Masonic Lodge should be the place where young men can come to learn those morals, values, and ethics that make a young man a gentleman. To a more prosperous lodge, my lodge has a museum. We put that together to share the history of our lodge, our historic building, as well as Freemasonry in general. We have open houses every so often, and the community comes up and tours our museum and the building. We have a young college student interested in joining our lodge. His aunt had arranged for him to tour the building 5 or 6 years ago when he was still in grade school. He never forgot it. I think we'll soon get a petition from him. In my opinion, the education officer in the lodge has one of the most important jobs there is. If he does his job right, he can save a dying lodge by bringing light back to the membership. He can bring new energy and interest to the members. There are libraries full of knowledge and teachings on the topics of Freemasonry. It has intrigued and interested generations of men, and it still holds that power today if one person in every lodge simply took an interest in it and made it their job to bring it to the brethren. One last story. A few weeks ago, I was the keynote speaker at a symposium put on by the Illinois Lodge of Research. It was well planned and a well-attended program. The purpose of that program was twofold, really. First, the Illinois Lodge of Research, for all intensive purposes, had been dormant for many years, so that program was kind of a coming back out party. The second purpose was to rebuild the organization by rebuilding a core group of strong Masonic authors, researchers, scholars, and presenters. Now, the Midnight Freemasons are not taking any direct credit for the resurgence of the Illinois Lodge of Research, but as I looked around the room, I realized the Midnight Freemasons' influence was definitely there. There were 3 Midnight Freemasons that were presenting topics, and 3 additional Midnight Freemason guest contributors in attendance. One of those played an integral role in planning and putting on the event. The master of the Illinois Lodge of Research, Jim Tome, is also the most excellent Grand High Priest of Illinois and has been instrumental in helping us to get a new education-based chapter of Royal Arch started in my lodge in Homer, Illinois, Admiration Chapter. He's been involved in much of what we're doing with Admiration Chapter, and he's seen a lot of what we've been doing with our Masonic Temple in Homer, Illinois. And at the end of that symposium, Jim Tome announced where they'd like to hold the next symposium. I'm sure you'll never guess. At the Masonic Temple in Homer, Illinois, the home of Admiration Chapter. So when I tell you to start small, don't think it's going to stay small. It won't. Like a snowball rolling downhill, you'll gain momentum and the size will continue to grow. Others will see what you're doing and be inspired to start their own projects. There is tremendous interest out there about Freemasonry, and if you teach it, and if you do a good job teaching it, you're going to find tremendous success. So if you want to see change, you can't sit around waiting for somebody else to do it. You have to be the change. Good luck, my brothers. Now get busy. There is work to be done. Todd Creason, 33rd Degree. All right, that's it for this week. Please head on over to wcypodcast.com and pick up a lapel pin, do some shopping, or make a direct donation. We use all of these things to help assist in keeping the show funded and all the episodes continuously available to all our listeners. We have over 1 million listeners. That's incredible, and it's because people like you, brothers, fellows, even profane, whether they be men in our fraternity or even women in the fraternity. We've reached so many people, and everybody who has been a part of either buying a pin or doing some shopping and using those coupon codes we have under the support the show links or making direct donations. You're all producers, and I cannot thank you enough for your assistance in bringing this program to so many people. If you like Masonic podcasts, please check out the Masonic Roundtable every Tuesday night going live at 10/9 Central. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention the Midnight Freemasons. 3 articles every single week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you have any questions or you'd like to get a hold of me, please go ahead and send an email over to wcypodcast@gmail.com or at admin@wcypodcast.com. I would just like to say thank you to all the people out there who get our app. Our app is free now, so if you see in the description of the show each week, it'll say app extras include. Some people ask me, where is the app? I haven't talked about the app in a long time. I would like to let you all know that the app is available in the Google Play Store, or it is available in the iTunes App Store. You search for The Podcast Source. Once you download that, you open it up and you do a search for Whence Came You inside there, and you can click us and then add us to your shows, and that's it. Totally free. It's all out there. There's no ads. There's no nothing inside there. It's just for you guys, and it's paid for already. It's done, and just a little thank you. So if you like the education that we're putting out there, make sure you check it out, because you can download all the papers that we read on the show for the most part through the app, so you have a PDF of it. Read it in Lodge. Check it out. Additionally, we have our Masonic-themed wallpapers that go up there just as a thank you to all of our listeners. So again, thank you so very much. I'll talk to you all next week. Until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.